And you wrote the film, but you also star and direct the film. Talk to me about the process.
As if you don't know.
To do that.
Right. I mean, well, so I'll talk about you. I knew I wanted to act in it, and I said that, well, okay, so the story really is, I met with Barry at Dalen Market Pastel, and this was before I sent any scripts, and Barry said to me, I'm having the most sentimental day ever. Barry said to me that the videos I was making online, which were 1-minute comedy videos for Twitter, it was a different time, that was filmmaking, and that there were, and he said, the choices you're making in these are the choices a director makes, and I think that really planted a seed in me that, you know, maybe someone could see something in what I was doing. And when I made those videos, I took it really seriously, and I think I pretended that it was not that way, but I really worked hard on them, and for someone to see me in something so aspirational was, I mean, really life-changing. And then I went away and wrote this, and they were the first people I wanted to send the script to because I felt very seen. And then, you know, I knew I wanted to act in it, and then the question of whether I wanted to direct it came up, and I thought that I just really didn't want to sacrifice something. Like, I didn't want something to get lost if I took on too much. And I ended up, after 2 months of thinking, they told me to go away and think. And I did, and I was like, I just really want to direct this. I'm just scared. And then we spent like 2 years figuring out. I spent 2 years figuring out what the fuck directing means. I don't know if I figured it out. But I then was gifted sort of time and guidance through that time.
I want to go back to the writing for a second, because the film that you guys just saw is non-linear. It doesn't unfold in chronological order, and it's not an editorial choice. That was a choice at the script phase. How did you come to make that decision? Why did you feel like that was the best way for us to experience the emotions, the intellectual emotional journey that the character goes on?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to start with this sort of burst of joyful friendship that I wanted. I mean, the film is about a friendship. That's the main relationship of the film. And I knew I wanted to show how romantic and intimate that kind of love can be, and I wanted sort of to hopefully make everyone feel like they could laugh sort of immediately, and that when things get harder later on, we have already laughed together so we can laugh again afterwards. And I do think though we don't mean to accidentally flatten people who've been through this kind of trauma, I think it's really scary for us to imagine that someone who's been through this is a whole person, because that sort of makes us face the fact that it could happen to us. And I wanted to give Agnes this fighting chance of being whole, so that when we go back in time, she's not someone we can leave behind or forget.
You talked about Agnes and Lydia, the friendship that's sort of at the core of the film. You talked about the prism of why telling the story non-linear is really interesting to you, why that drew you. You know, there's not a love story in the film, but if there is, it's between these two friends. It's, when I first read the script, it was sort of like the bedrock. It's a really interesting choice to make in a story like this. Why was that important to you? Why did you make that choice to frame the story this way?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I think I wrote the film was for the sequence where we are on the house, and then Agnes treks back home into sort of the embrace of this person, and that person hears what happened very well, and that was that scene in the bathtub, and the example of Liddy holding that information so well and so lovingly being able to repeat back to Agnes what happened, was the point of the film for me. Like, that kind of love, and making a film that feels like a sort of a piece of gratitude towards that person holding Agnes. film. And, you know, you can't, I think if Liddy wasn't in the film, like, it would be genuinely, like, the most devastating film in the world. The only reason there's any kind of joy in the film is because they're a united front throughout. And I also think, I was also interested in, like, the way time moves for Agnes and the way time moves for Liddy in these years is so different. Like, Liddy goes from not even understanding that she's queer to, like, having a family, and Agnes kind of, like, can now go to the living room. Like, that's so, and they still find ways to love each other even though there's such a different life happening. So yeah, the friendship was, like, always at the center of the film.
The way you balance the different tones in the movie is crazy. You just said a very emotional, heavy thing. And there's
Like, funny, like, no one knows that.
There's really funny, well, they know it now. There's really funny shit in this movie. Even at the script page, you read the script, you can feel that. How are you balancing that, you know, as you're either in production or in post-production? And were there moments where you thought, we need to laugh right here? Or you thought, oh, I don't think it's appropriate to laugh right here?
Definitely. Yeah, you know, as you're, like, as I was writing, there was kind of just this, like, intuitive, now we need to laugh. But when you go through the actual experience of making a film, you kind of have to continue calibrating what's actually okay and what feels right. And, you know, I feel like it's never a big moment like a big moment where you realize something. It's every day just constantly calibrating, mostly in the edit, really, how to not lose someone through a tonal shift. And that I owe a lot of that calibration to my editors, Alex O'Flynn and Randy Atkins, who we were in a real journey of, like, every day doing, like, the optometry, like A or B, you know, B or C or whatever. And like, an example of that is, I think in the script, that the jury scene, I always felt like I wrote it to be this sort of intermission of relief. And then when I got to set, I was experiencing this thing with Agnes being really scared and upset, and kind of had to go down that road. And in the edit, we sort of stripped that whole section down, and it feels much more someone confronting their worst nightmare situation instead of this interlude. So, and in the edit, we kind of honored, the experience of how the performance was moving on set. But yeah, it's like in the part from Agnes in the bathtub to going to the doctor, I feel like it's once we unlocked how to move, the real way we unlocked the doctor scene is to just make it, like, more and more heightened. Because it was, like, somehow heightening allowed us to get some distance, and the film then is pointing a finger at the doctor saying, we can laugh at him, and that distance is actually, like, relieving or something. I'm still trying to figure it all out.
When you say us in distance, you mean yourself and the viewer? Are you speaking of the viewer, the audience, or?
All of us.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I just, like, I think my working theory is that there's, like, 3 reasons people laugh, and none of them really have to do with anything being funny. It's like, one is the friendship it's nice to feel part of the friendship. 2 is, Agnes is, like, awkward, which I discovered is very humbling to learn that she's weird. And when she's in, like, the world, it's, like, funny because she's acting weird. And then the third thing is, I think, when the film is like, these people are acting in sort of everyday cruel ways, laugh at them because it's cathartic for us all to make fun of them and point at them. But nothing's, like, so funny. Don't say that I said that.
When I was studying film, the big conversation was about showing versus telling. You kind of take that to the extreme in this film, because there are things that we expect to be shown that are told, and things that we expect to be shown that are shown in this movie. But there's this thing at the center of the movie that could dominate it, and you do this really beautiful thing. You actually already explained it when Agnes walks out of Deckers. She goes all the way back. She's on this journey journey to her source of wholeness, to Lydia, and then speaks aloud things. She tells the story that we did not see. And when that telling happens, you absolutely believe that what is being told happens. It totally inverts this thing. As a writer or as a director, at what point did you realize this is the way I'm going to communicate this central thing in this movie?
I think I always knew I didn't want to show what happens behind the door, and I think with every decision, I feel like I have an instinct, and then I have to like figure out why, and I'm still figuring out reasons why that was important to me. I mean, one of the main ones is what you just said, like I wanted the film to believe her at her word, and we never really get access behind doors like that, and the film just kind of doesn't question whether that happened, and that meant a lot to me. I also wanted to sort of let Agnes have her dignity and tell us when she wanted to and when she felt safe, and it didn't feel appropriate for us to be ahead of her. I wanted us to feel with her and feeling doom, but not making sense of what happened. Yeah, and I seriously have another reason. I swear. If I keep talking, I'm not going to remember any silence, but I'm not going to take silence because it's too awkward. Oh yeah, okay, ready? I also kind of have this feeling that this experience is like divorces her body from her spirit, and in some way her body walks in behind those doors, but her spirit sort of doesn't. And I like the idea that we're with her spirit outside, and there's like this sort of freeze response that I feel like is true. But you helped me a lot with that because I really wanted to shoot that whole sequence where she goes home at Blue Hour. I have this thing with Blue Hour. No one knows what that is, but I think we all kind of do too. And I was like, we need to shoot it at Blue Hour. It's gonna be beautiful, and it's like that's the time. And it was a very small film, and we couldn't go. We had one day at this location, so I was like really struggling to decide to make it night. And then we had a call where you were like, it's her subjective experience of this, and everything has shifted. It's okay if it feels like time has passed in a way that doesn't totally track to reality. And that really unlocked something for me actually with the whole film, because actually the whole film is subjective in many ways. Like the house is both a nest in moments and it's warm, and then sometimes it's like a house of horrors, and there's like everything is, and there's moments that like are a horror movie in the film, and that's subjective, and I think it unlocked this idea that we experience time as Agnes does, we experience the feeling of the world as Agnes does, and that moment was important.
It's the magic of cinema. Wait, so what else you guys when Nicole Kidman says before speaking?
Did she do it here? She's watching the movie with us.
Like your movie, I'm gonna totally shift tone for this next question. How did you convince Lucas Hedges to stand up and pretend that his flaccid penis just popped out?
I mean, there was no convincing. Yeah, honestly, that was a hard scene to shoot, only not because of vibe, only because the bathtub was like the only thing in the room was the size of like these two chairs, and so everything had to be shot in like sections, and he's a brilliant actor, and so obviously that was disrupting the flow of what was happening, but you know, he's a comedian, and I think that is his passion and his calling. And he was very excited to dive into some real physical comedy.
Well, it's a place where
He was very short.
He was not, I was there. I wasn't there. I was fucking making pasta the light.
You were making pasta.
Well, I was there for a week.
Totally. Not that day.
Not that
We were
day.
making pasta that day.
That scene in the script versus in the film, it's the same scene, but it's just, I think that was the last day of filming, or it was the last week of filming. You grew over the course of making the movie, I'll say, just watching rushes being on set, I think for the third week of production. we're in Hollywood, there are people out here who are aspiring to be first-time directors
You gotta do it.
Century City, AMC. How does it feel to have gone through this journey? When we first went down the road to make this film, Eva had been, as an actor on many film sets, and made these wonderful, fucking hilarious Twitter videos, like, oh my goodness, so much talent, but hadn't been on a real film set, so they did like a boot camp. Picked up 2 scenes from the movie and went off and made those and cut those. And then when you get to Massachusetts, it's like the real deal.
Yeah.
But you really grew into it. I'm just, for anyone out here who's maybe trying to get something off the ground or trying to, oh my God, trying to go from being an influencer to being the director. Yeah. What would you say was the thing? What would you say was the thing that got you to really get up and step through the door and truly do it? Was it a De La Romansky?
Well, obviously.
Our producers were up there.
Well, I found out that Pastel is very good at, they ask a lot of questions, and so then your job is to answer questions, which really helps you figure out they're very good at helping you figure out what you want. I think someone dropped something, it's not wrong. Kind of like there was a really painful period in my life where I wanted someone to come, like, save me from, I wanted someone to say, you need to go do this, like, this is what you're supposed to do, like, let me pick you up and put you in this thing. And at some point, I kind of realized, like, no one was coming, and I had to be that person. So I started making Twitter videos. That's, like, literally true. And then, no one ever said you have to write. Like, literally, no one said that. And I was like, I want to write a movie. So that is the only thing I know is true, is if you want to do it. I feel like there is this little thing where you have this little fire seed inside you that's like, you're supposed to be doing something, and denying that, I think, is, like, sad. And at some point, you'll just have to do it because the pain of not doing it outweighs the pain of imagining doing it and being bad at it. Like, at some point, the pain is worth it or something. I don't know, what do you think? Sheesh.
I think that, I know we have to go. I think that...
We're having a good time.
I think that the videos you were making, and I said to you, the way this went down, I have been following Eva Victor for like 2.5 years, and then out of the blue, Eva Victor followed me on Twitter, and I was like, holy shit, Eva Victor follows me.
Can you imagine hearing that right now?
And so I DM'd them and said, hey, I've been watching your videos for so long. Are you writing anything? Because I just think you are just the most talented person in the world. And if you have something you ever want to make, I know people that are standing up there in the corner who know how to make movies. And come to us, and what did Suge Knight say? If you don't want the producer dancing all up in the video, come to Death Row. I said, hey, come to Death Row, aka Pastel. And they did. But you had to make those videos, and they were really beautiful and powerful. Hilarious, yes, they were. Straight cry, yes. But you were putting yourself out there. And I think.
Wait, it's so embarrassing, but that's okay.
But you weren't putting yourself out there going, hey, please, I want to make movies. You were just like, I just want to express myself. And that's what I think folks anywhere and everywhere will respond to. I have to say one quick thing before we really wrap up. I used to work in a movie theater just like this. I see lots of popcorn and sodas. That's awesome. Support your local AMC. However, for the staff that's turning the theater for the next movie, when you leave, take that popcorn, take those sodas with you, and deposit them in the trash. Hey, do you have anything else to say?
No, good. Thank you.